for the dedication towards the implementation of the 2020-2021 fiscal plan. In some areas, we had challenges which together we can only learn from as we embark on the implementation of the 2021-2022 national budget. Madam Speaker, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Cabinet colleagues, honourable members of this august House and its committees, development partners, the academia, professional bodies, and members of the general public for the valuable contributions towards the formulation of this budget. Stakeholders were engaged virtually, and I have to report with humility that there was overwhelming response to our call for contributions to the budget. All contributions were considered, most of which have been incorporated in this budget, while others have been placed in our database for further review and consideration in subsequent budgets. Madam Speaker, in a special way, let me mention and thank just a few people. Mr. Yohane Kapichi of Molangi Secondary School, who provided government with some suggestions on how to eradicate corruption in this country. Mr. Matewere Piri of Chilanga Village in Kasungu for a good suggestion on how to support the elderly. And Mr. Peter Stima of Zingwangwa Township for his comment on the pension scheme. I truly value their contribution to this national budget and indeed its policies. Lastly, Madam Speaker, it gives me pleasure to inform this august House that for the first time in the history of Malawi, the Ministry of Finance engaged local authorities who also made insightful presentations. Madam Speaker, all these engagements were in line with the Tonse Alliance agenda of bringing together aspirations of all Malawians in formulating economic policies that affect them. As such, Madam Speaker, this budget is an outcome of a very rigorous consultative process. I would therefore like to urge the honourable members to support this budget through constructive debate, as we all have one common goal: to better the lives of our people through economic growth and development. Madam Speaker, in the past 10 months of the Tonse administration, government through the National Planning Commission laid out a national development blueprint, the Malawi 2063, which outlines that by the year 2063, the Malawi we want should be an inclusively wealth and self-reliant, industrialized, upper-middle income nation. This, Madam Speaker, is the agenda that as a people we have set out on our own to be implemented by ourselves and for ourselves. With passage of time, Madam Speaker, I have learned that no one will come from far lands and develop Malawi for us. This is our country and this is our obligation. I therefore have the belief that Malawians, beginning with the honourable members in this august House, are capable of embarking on this journey and will do so because the need for economic success to lift the plight of our people is our unifying factor. Madam Speaker, the budget I'm about to present is the first since His Excellency the President launched the national vision, the Malawi 2063. This budget, therefore, sets the pace in implementing economic policies and programs that will put this country on track to reach the nation's desired destiny. In many ways, therefore, sectoral allocations in this budget are in line with the long-term aspirations of our nation as enunciated in the Malawi 2063. Madam Speaker, the Tonse Alliance government, through the 2021-2022 budget, will continue with its drive to enrich macroeconomic stability, characterized by low and stable inflation rate and economic growth that will ensure the country's resilience to and recovery from the devastating impact of COVID-19 pandemic. As stated by His Excellency the President in the State of the Nation Address presented in this August House on 12th May 2021, this government will focus on programs with impact to achieve permanent food security, create jobs for the youth, and create wealth for all. Madam Speaker, government is determined to achieve this through the attainment of a robust, inclusive, and resilient economic growth, economic empowerment, and infrastructure development. Alongside this overall objective, government will pursue its obligations to mitigate the social and economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, this budget will continue to deliver on the promises that the Tonse Alliance made to the people of Malawi when it took office in June 2020. As such, the 2021-2022 fiscal budget has been framed under the theme, Building Back Better, Achieving Aspirations of the Nation Together. Madam Speaker, without doubt, the 2021-2022 budget has been formulated amidst some uncertainties due to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, like the previous budget, which was implemented at the peak of the pandemic, prospects for the budget are brighter, although risks from the third wave remain high, considering that some parts of the global village, including countries that are Malawi's major trading partners, have been affected. Madam Speaker, it is therefore expected that implementation of the 2021-2022 budget will continue to face challenges. Revenue performance will remain subdued in the short term, but is expected to rebound as the economy gradually recovers. Pressure on expenditure will, however, continue in the short to medium term on account of continued need for resources to adequately respond to the after effects of the pandemic. Further resources will be required for investment to recover and build resilience against future shocks to this economy. Madam Speaker, improved economic growth prospects for this country are, however, on account of the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine, which is expected to boost economic confidence. This is also bolstered by the normal to above normal rains that this country received and the positive impact of the Affordable Inputs Program, which was implemented for the first time by the Tonse government. Madam Speaker, despite the negative effects of the novel coronavirus, inflation rate remained low and relatively stable, oscillating within the single digits. As at the end of April 2021, headline inflation was recorded at 9.2%. The low inflation rate enabled the Reserve Bank of Malawi to reduce the policy rate in November 2020 from 13.5% to 12%. The official exchange rate has also remained fairly stable at around 780 kwacha per US dollar, although experiencing depreciation pressures on account of subdued supply of foreign currency following a drop in the country's export proceeds as a result of the pandemic. Madam Speaker, the high and rising public debt remains a major concern. To counter this, government will implement a number of fiscal consolidation initiatives, including, but not limited to, enhancement of external resource mobilization, domestic revenue mobilization, public expenditure efficiency, and prioritization. Government has also engaged external creditors for debt relief as part of efforts to mitigate the economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the domestic economy. 2020-2021 budget performance. Madam Speaker, the likely outturn for total revenues and grants during the 2020-2021 fiscal year is projected at 1.523 trillion kwacha, representing 16.4% of the country's rebased GDP. Of this amount, domestic revenues are expected to close the year at 1.186 trillion kwacha, while grants are projected at 337.5 billion kwacha. Madam Speaker, of the domestic revenues, tax revenues are projected at 1.116 trillion kwacha, or 12% of the rebased GDP, while other revenues are estimated to close at 69.6 billion kwacha. Compliance issues and the narrow tax base remain a challenge, as implementation of some tax administrative reforms, such as the Integrated Tax Administration System, ITAS, are yet to be fully operational. Government expects full implementation of this system to be completed during the 2021-2022 financial year. Performance of expenditure. Madam Speaker, total expenditure to the 2020-2021 fiscal year ended is projected at 2.335 trillion kwacha, representing 25.2% of the rebased GDP. Recurrent expenses will amount to 1.719 trillion kwacha, constituting 73.6% of the total expenditures and 18.5% of the country's GDP. Madam Speaker, major expenditure lines within recurrent expenses included compensation of employees at 542.2 billion kwacha, interest on public debt at 376 billion kwacha, and generic goods and services at 223.8 billion. Development expenditure is expected to amount to 615.8 billion, representing 6.6% of GDP and 26.4% of total expenditure, of which 104.7 billion will be financed using domestic resources and 511.1 billion by foreign resources. Overall balance and borrowing. Madam Speaker, developments in the revenues and expenditures are projected to amount to a fiscal deficit of 811.7 billion, representing 8.8% of GDP. This deficit is on account of a number of factors, including A, the subdued revenue performance, B, expenses in response to COVID-19 pandemic, and C, the significantly high proportion of mandatory expenses. The deficit will be financed through foreign borrowing of 246.3 billion kwacha and domestic borrowing of 565.4 billion kwacha, or 6.1% of GDP. World and regional outlook. Madam Speaker, allow me to turn to current economic developments as well as the economic outlook at the international, regional, and national levels. This is important as it gives honorable members a full understanding of the context within which the budget has been formulated and the assumptions underlying the budget. Madam Speaker, according to the April 2021 World Economic Outlook report by the International Monetary Fund, global prospects remain highly uncertain 1 year into the pandemic. However, global economic growth is projected at 6% in 2021 and moderating to 4.4% in 2022. These projections reflect the impact of additional fiscal support in a few large economies, the anticipated vaccine-powered recovery during the second half of 2021, and continued adaptation of economic activity to subdued mobility of persons and capital. Sub-Saharan regional economic outlook. Madam Speaker, GDP growth rate in Sub-Saharan Africa is projected to rebound from the largest ever contraction for the region of minus 1.9% in 2020 to 3.4% in 2021 and 4% in 2022. The pandemic continues to exert adverse effects on the region. Tourism reliable economies will likely be the most affected. South Africa, Malawi's major trading partner, is projected to register a growth rate of 3.1% in 2021 compared to a recession recorded at minus 7% in 2020. In 2022, economic recovery in South Africa will continue, albeit slower, at 2%. Malawi's macroeconomic developments. Madam Speaker, economic prospects for Malawi are showing signs of recovery following the declining COVID-19 pandemic cases and steady progress in rolling out the vaccine. The economy is also expected to register improved economic growth rates on account of the favorable rain season and the successful implementation of the Affordable Imports Program. Madam Speaker, the country's economic growth, which was recorded at 0.9% in 2020, is expected to jump to 3.8% in 2021 and 5.2% in 2022. This is mainly on the assumption that there will be gradual lifting of containment measures and that businesses will slowly return to normality during the second half of 2021. The agriculture sector is projected to grow by 6.2% in 2021, and due to its strong backward and forward linkages, most economic sectors are expected to register positive growth rates as well. Madam Speaker, the annual average inflation rate has remained within single digits, recorded at 9.4% and 8.6% in 2019 and 2020 respectively. In 2021 and 2022, inflation rate is projected at 7.5% and 7.3% respectively. Inflation pressure during the fiscal year is expected to be moderated by subdued food inflation, especially on account of increased maize supply. Government, Madam Speaker, is on track to obtain its overarching monetary policy objective of a headline inflation rate of 5% in 2022 and 3% in 2025. Government reform programs. Madam Speaker, allow me to report
order, please,
on the
honorable
status
members. Can I
of the
have order,
implementation of some policy issues aimed at supporting the national budget and implementation of the Tonse government agenda. Public finance management. Madam Speaker, the review of the Public Finance Management Act 2003 is in its final stages, and the bill will be submitted to this August House during this session. Integrated Financial Management System, IFMIS. Madam Speaker,
have order, honorable members. Order, please.
You recall that in my last budget statement, I reported as part of the strengthening public finance management systems, government through the Department of Accountant General rolled out the new IFMIS on 1st July 2020. Madam Speaker, we also recall that this was done in a phased manner where 10 selected votes and 4 modules were identified as part of the pilot phase.
My left, can I have order, please?
Madam Speaker, implementation in the pilot phase experienced some challenges, including inadequate and user training, network problems, and project slippages due to the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. However, the pilot phase is in its stabilization stage, and users are now able to process transactions with minimum support. I am pleased
order, please,
to inform the August House that full rollout of the new IFMIS is on schedule for 1st July 2021. The Malawi Enterprise Development Fund. Madam Speaker, in September 2020, Malawi Enterprise Development Fund, MEDEF, was rebranded into the National Economic Empowerment Fund, NEF, to enhance its operations to economically empower Malawians, especially the youth and women, through job creation, enhancement of entrepreneurial activities, and to support agricultural activities and value addition. Madam Speaker, NEF commenced disbursing loans in accordance with its new policies and procedures. To date, NEF has disbursed to over 2,700 groups, which comprise 10 or more beneficiaries per group. Currently, NEF is recruiting more loan officers, and this will enable them enhance outreach to more clients. Payment of government arrears. Madam Speaker, in an effort to support the business community through an injection of the much-needed liquidity into the economy during the COVID-19 pandemic period, the Tonse government commenced paying the arrears which the previous government owed the private sector. Some of these arrears date as far back as 2015. The Auditor General is auditing these arrears, and the Ministry of Finance is clearing the audited arrears through issuance of promissory notes for amounts in excess of 100 million, while amounts of less than 100 million are being cleared through the budget. Long-term development bond. Madam Speaker, the honourable members will recall that in my last budget statement, government announced its intention to embark on other innovative financing arrangements for this country's infrastructure development. One such financing arrangement was the issuance of a long-term local development bond. I am pleased to report that government has progressed with preparations to issue a 15-year development bond for some strategic and flagship projects. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Economic Planning and Development and Public Sector Reforms, in conjunction with the Ministry of Finance, completed the selection of 15 projects that will be financed through the issuance of a local development bond. Honourable members, government is expected to raise 1 trillion kwacha from the local market over a period of 5 years to finance these flagship projects, including the following: construction of the Nkosimbera University in Mzimba, where access roads have been completed and building design. Zalekanshisi Mpalo Malomo Road to be upgraded to a paved road covering 70 kilometers. Lilangwe Chingale Namatulu Machinga Road to be upgraded to a paved road and covering a distance of 62 kilometers.
Order, honorable members. Can I have order, please? Order, please. Order, please.
Yes, the third project is Lilangwe Chingale Namaturu Machinga Road to be upgraded. Rumpi Ntalile Nyika Chitipa Road. Chikwawa Chapananga Mwanza Road. And some of the other roads and those flagship projects are contained in an annex on.
Can I have order, please?
Other projects are contained in an annex, to this statement, which is going to be made available to honorable members. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, these are just some of the many projects that will be financed using the development bond. A full list of government projects is circulated in this August House, as I've just said, and the Minister of Finance will soon release a prospectus comprising all the 15 projects before the beginning of the next financial calendar. Madam Speaker, I am further pleased to inform this August House that where possible, other financing models for these projects will be considered, such as public-private partnership arrangements, as well as soliciting foreign or local direct financing, or indeed placements, where government will receive a turnkey solution from a project promoter. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, the long-term development bond will be structured in such a way that it will incentivize Malawians in the diaspora in the development of this country through infrastructure projects. In other words, we are also going to invite Malawians in the diaspora to buy into this bond. Civil service personnel audit. Madam Speaker, government carried out a head count for the civil service. As was the case with the pension payroll audit in 2020, the civil service personnel audit is aimed at bringing efficiency in use of public resources by ensuring that only bona fide civil servants are paid by government. Field work for this audit was completed and the draft report is expected by the end of June 2021. Government will implement recommendations from this audit as part of its civil service reforms agenda. Affordable Inputs Program. Madam Speaker, in the 2020-2021 fiscal year, government introduced the Affordable Inputs Program, which targeted 4.2 million farming families. This program, honorable members, is a success as it has not only helped to achieve food security, but also contributed to creation of jobs and indeed business opportunities to small and medium-scale enterprises, especially those in the transport and real estate sectors. According to official numbers from the Ministry of Agriculture, this country, Madam Speaker, is expected to achieve a national maize surplus estimated at 1.4 million metric tons. Government, through its various organs, has already started looking for export markets within Africa. Madam Speaker, due to the huge success of the AIP in 2020-2021, I am pleased to inform this August House that government will continue with the program in the 2021-2022 financial year. Creation of a debt retirement fund. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Finance is at an advanced stage in establishing the debt retirement fund. The Ministry is now working with the Ministry of Justice to establish the legal framework of the fund and its operations. The review of the PFM Act 2003 has incorporated this legal framework, and the fund is expected to be operational during the 2021-2022 fiscal year, once the revised Public Finance Management Bill has been enacted by this August House. Formalizing the informal sector. Madam Speaker, this government is committed to empower the informal sector, entrepreneurs, through the establishment of cooperatives and skills development to enable them produce quality products, both for the local market as well as for the export market. Under the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act, government in December 2020 enacted regulations to empower micro, small and medium enterprises to participate in public procurement of goods, works and services, provided that the SMEs are registered as business entities and are also registered with the Malawi Revenue Authority. Madam Speaker, in line with the SME order, public procurement is expected to prioritize locally made products such as furniture and uniforms of security institutions and health personnel. This will enable SME sector, where most of its players are in the formal category, to contribute towards national development through participation in public procurement and remittance of taxes. Free electricity and water connections. Madam Speaker, the Tonse government promised the people of Malawi free electricity and water connections. The Ministry of Energy has completed drafting of the free electricity connection policy, which will provide a platform for free connections to individuals and public institutions in the rural and urban and peri-urban areas. Under this arrangement, connection fees, which average 17,500, will be scrapped off. Madam Speaker, let me repeat on that one. Under this arrangement, connection fees, which average 17,500, will be scrapped off. Implementation will commence during the 2021-2022 fiscal year. A similar approach is being worked on for the implementation of free water connections. Houses for security institutions. Madam Speaker, construction of the 10,000 houses for the security institutions commenced. This project is being implemented in phases. Honourable members may wish to note that over 231 houses are under construction in various sites, and another lot of 1,000 has been advertised, soliciting bids from contractors. Financing for this project is through a long-term development bond that was issued by government and raised the initial amount of 21 billion kwacha. Extended credit facility with IMF. Madam Speaker, the Tonse Alliance government cancelled the IMF's extended credit facility program with Malawi immediately after coming into power. This was mainly due to a refocus of policy objectives. Furthermore, the program that was inherited by Tonse administration was off track and it was impossible to bring it back on track. Madam Speaker, as a stopgap measure, the Tonse Alliance government and the IMF agreed on a second rapid credit facility which disbursed $102 million to Malawi in October 2020. Of this amount, $30 million was a direct budget support to the government. Going forward, the Minister of Finance has commenced negotiations with the IMF for a new program, which is expected to align its objectives with that of government and the National Vision Malawi 2063. The 2021-2022 budget. Madam Speaker, in the 2021-2022 fiscal year, government will focus on implementation of economic policies and programs that will put this country on track to attain the nation's aspirations as prescribed in the Malawi 2063. There are so many targets that government will aim to achieve by 2063. But as His Excellency the President said in the State of the Nation address, food security, jobs and wealth creation are the low-hanging objectives that will move this country towards 2063 destiny. Madam Speaker, alongside these objectives, government will aim to entrench macroeconomic stability, enhance the country's resilience to external shocks, and fast-track economic recovery during the post-COVID-19 pandemic period. These honourable members are the defining tenets and the context within which the 2021-2022 budget has been framed and will be implemented. Major assumptions for the 2021-2022 budget. Madam Speaker, the 2021-2022 budget has been developed under the following assumptions. Real growth domestic product, a growth rate of 3.8% in 2021 and 5.4% in 2022. Average inflation rate of 7.4% during the fiscal year. A stable exchange rate of about 780 kwacha per US dollar, a policy rate of 12%, and tax refunds at 3% of total tax collection. Total revenue and grants. Madam Speaker, total revenue and grants for the 9 months of the 2021-2022 fiscal year are estimated at 1.271 trillion kwacha, representing 12.4% of GDP. Domestic revenues are estimated at 1.101 trillion kwacha, of which tax revenues are estimated at 1.004 trillion kwacha, representing 10.2% of GDP. Other revenues have been estimated at 56.9 billion kwacha. Grants. Madam Speaker, these grants are estimated at 170.3 billion kwacha, representing 1.7% of GDP. This comprises 58.4 billion kwacha from foreign governments and 100 1.9 billion kwacha from international organizations in form of dedicated and project grants. Total expenditure. Madam Speaker, total expenditure for the 2021-2022 fiscal year is programmed at 1.990 trillion kwacha, representing 19.4% of GDP. This represents a drop from 25.2% of GDP during the 2020-2021 fiscal year. Of the total expenditure, recurrent expenses are estimated at 1.419 trillion, representing 71.3% of total expenditure. Development expenditure, Madam Speaker, is programmed at 570.8 billion, representing 5.6% of the rebased GDP. This, however, excludes the development expenditure that will be financed through the issuance of the long-term development bond, where some of the projects will be financed off budget. Overall fiscal balance and financing. Madam Speaker, the 2021-2022 overall balance is estimated at a deficit of 718.3 billion kwacha, which is 7% of the rebased GDP, and markedly lower compared to 8.8% of GDP during the 2020-2021 fiscal year. This deficit will be financed through foreign borrowing amounting to 134.8 billion and domestic borrowing amounting to 583.5 billion, or 5.7% of the rebased GDP. Highlights of the 2021-2022 budget. Recurrent budget, wages and salaries. Madam Speaker, wages and salaries are projected at 436.3 billion kwacha, representing 4.2% of the rebased GDP. This includes an amount of 20.3 billion, which is earmarked for salaries, for salary rationalization and recruitment, pensions and gratuities. Madam Speaker, pensions and gratuities have been projected at 77.6 billion, while 13.3 billion is for the contributory pension scheme. It should be further noted that resources amounting to 375 million have been set aside for settlement of past liabilities of the retired civil servants under the contributory pension scheme. Interest payments. Madam Speaker, public debt interest is projected at 299.7 billion, or 2.9% of the rebased GDP. Of this amount, 14.5 billion is payable to non-residents, while 285.3 billion is payable to residents. The projected public debt interest is 27.2% of the country's projected domestic revenues. Maize purchase. Madam Speaker, in the 2021-2022 fiscal budget, 12 billion has been allocated for maize purchase by the National Food Reserve Agency and ADMAC to restock the strategic grain reserves. These resources are part of the total allocation of the agriculture sector and are slightly higher compared to last year's allocation, which was 10 billion. Madam Speaker, this allocation is specifically for restocking the SGR. For more purchases other than this, ADMAC will be supported to borrow from commercial banks, and government has already approved the use of last year's maize sale proceeds to purchase the new maize. This, Madam Speaker, will capacitate the grain trader to buy most of the maize from smallholder farmers to cushion prices on the back of increased supply this year. Affordable Inputs Program. Madam Speaker, in line with the first pillar of Malawi's 2063, agricultural productivity and commercialization, an amount of 142 billion kwacha has been allocated to AIP, which is expected to achieve an outreach of not less than 3.5 million farming families. These resources are part of the total allocation to the agricultural sector. Empowerment of people with disabilities and albinism. Madam Speaker, in order to continue with the empowerment
There's so
of
much
persons
background
with
noise, honorable
disabilities,
members.
the budget has allocated 75 million to the Disability Fund and 300 million for the implementation of the action plan for the protection of people with albinism. In addition, 400 million has been allocated under Ministry of Lands for the construction of houses for people with albinism. Early childhood development education. Madam Speaker, in an effort to promote quality education, quality childhood development, government will start giving honoraria of 15,000 kwacha per month to certified caregiver workers during the 2020. This is expected to motivate our workers, thereby enhancing their dedication to the duty. Key sector allocations and development projects. Education and skills development sector.
Order,
Madam
honorable members.
Speaker,
Order,
the
please.
importance of developing the education sector in a country where over 50% of its population are under 18 years old cannot be overemphasized. As an enabler for economic growth and development, this sector has a critical role in the attainment of the country's national aspirations. Madam Speaker, for the 9 months of the 2021-2022 fiscal year, and in line with enabler number 5 in the Malawi 2063, that's human capital development, this sector has been allocated the largest portion of the budget at 327.3 billion kwacha, which is 3.2% of GDP and representing 16.5% of the total budget. These resources will cater for wages and salaries, operations of both primary and secondary schools, for subvented organizations, including public universities, and to finance projects in that sector. Education sector projects. Madam Speaker, government will continue with initiatives to improve human capital development through infrastructure projects, projects including the following: completion of the construction of 3 teacher training colleges for primary school teachers in Mchinji, Chikwawa, and Rumpi, construction of 383 low-cost classrooms and 52 classroom blocks for primary school education, and completion of the construction of 92 new secondary schools during the 2021-2022, thereby creating 18,400 spaces in rural schools. This is part of the SEED project, whose overall goal is to construct 250 CDSSs by the end of 2023. Madam Speaker, as I indicated earlier on, government will mobilize resources for the construction of the Nkhani University, and works are expected to commence during this financial year, 2021-2022. Agricultural sector. Madam Speaker, the agricultural sector has been allocated 84.4 billion kwacha, which is 2.8% of GDP and representing 14.3% of the total budget. This provision is intended to enhance agricultural productivity as presented under Pillar 1 of the Malawi 2063 and to achieve permanent food security for all Malawians. These resources will cater for wages and salaries for officers in the sector, operations for all the agricultural departments, the rehabilitation of the strategic grain reserves and affordable input program and development projects. Some of the projects in the agriculture sector include the agricultural infrastructure and youth in agribusiness, Shire Valley Transformation Project, and the livestock infrastructure development for sustainable animal health. Health sector. Madam Speaker, expenditure in this sector falls under the Human Capital Development Enabler number 5 of the Malawi 2063. This has been allocated 187.2 billion kwacha, which is 1.8% of GDP, representing 9.4% of the total budget. These resources will cater for wages and salaries for health personnel, operational expenses for central and district hospitals, procurement of medical drugs and vaccines, maintenance costs for hospitals and medical equipment, as well as development projects. Health sector projects. Madam Speaker, during the 2021-2022 fiscal year, government will focus on a few but impactful infrastructure projects to ensure efficient delivery of health services. Some of the earmarked projects include construction of Mponera Community Hospital, construction of Domasi Community Hospital, and rehabilitation of all district hospitals in Malawi.
But for Zomba Malosa, if you have any issues, you will have time to raise, please.
Transport and public sector. Madam Speaker, the transport sector has been allocated 208.4 billion kwacha, or 2% of GDP, representing 10.5% of the total budget. Out of this, 94.5 billion has been allocated to the Roads Fund Administration for rehabilitation and maintenance of road network, as well as continuation and completion of various road projects across the country. Transport and public works projects. Madam Speaker, the government is implementing the annual routine maintenance of the 4,998 kilometers of unpaved road network. This involves grading and reshaping of the earth roads that are inaccessible during the rain season. The following projects, whose preparatory processes have already been concluded, are lined up to commence during the 2021-2022 fiscal year. The M1 road from Kamuzu International Airport Junction to Mzimba, Nsipe Liwonde Road, expansion of dual carriageway of the M1 road from Mchinji roundabout to Kanengo, expansion to 6 lanes of the Kenyatta Drive from Parliament roundabout to ShopRite, Mzimba, Iswazini, Mzarangwe, Kafukule, Njakwa Road, Madam Speaker, government is now constructing 2 toll plazas on the M1, which will assist to raise funds for road maintenance activities in the country. Construction is underway at Chingeni in Shehu and Kalinyeka in Dedza. Energy sector. Madam Speaker, just like the transport sector, which falls under Enabler 6, economic infrastructure of the Malawi 2063, the energy sector is very critical to promote economic activity and catalyze foreign direct investments for wealth creation. This sector has been allocated 60.7 billion kwacha, which is 0.6% of GDP, representing 3% of the total budget. Madam Speaker, government working with the private sector aim to increase the country's energy generation capacity by about 1,000 megawatts, as in fact, His Excellency mentioned. Focus is also on diversifying the energy sources to include solar, wind, hydrothermal, and geothermal. Some of the projects lined up during the 2021-2022 fiscal year include development of Mpatamanga Hydro Plant, Malawi-Mozambique Interconnector, and the Malawi Electricity Access, which is expected to increase access to electricity in this country. Industrial development. Madam Speaker, industrialization is the second pillar in the Malawi 2063. Government recognizes the importance of this sector in ensuring economic growth, employment opportunities, and wealth creation. Hence, the establishment of the Ministry of Industry as a standalone ministry. Through the ministry, government has already commenced implementing programs aimed at developing the country's industrial sector and value addition. Madam Speaker, government has also allocated 2 billion for the development of special economic zones in this country. The project entails establishing the special economic zones at Matindi and Ichigumula in Blantyre, Area 55 in Lilongwe, and Katoto in Mzuzu. Government has already paid for the land in Chigumula and is working with the Export Development Fund to mobilize the resources for compensation payments to affected citizens around these areas. Madam Speaker, the Special Economic Zones Bill has been developed and is currently with the Ministry of Justice. Implementation and construction of the Special Economic Zones will commence during this fiscal year, that's 2021-2022. Mining sector. Madam Speaker, the mining sector holds a vital key to the desired transformation of this country. It has an enormous untapped potential to contribute to the national socio-economic development through job creation, foreign exchange earnings, and economic empowerment. Government is therefore determined to usher into existence a well-regulated mining sector that facilitates participation of all stakeholders in the development, utilization, and management of the mineral and petroleum resources. In view of the foregoing, Madam Speaker, during the 2021-2022 financial year, government will undertake a number of interventions to enhance growth of the mining sector. These include establishing the Mining Regulatory Authority to regulate the sector in developing, managing, and utilization of mineral resources in line with sustainable development principles and practices.
Honorable Member for
Establishing Mining Corporation, a state-owned company to ensure optimal development of the mining sector and maximization of national mineral revenues and social benefits, and completing construction and rehabilitation works at the Ministry of Mining headquarter offices and mineral laboratories at Area 4 in Lilongwe. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to inform the August House that the Reserve Bank of Malawi established a structured minerals market and buying gold, and as from 1st of May 2021. To date, gold worth 140 million kwacha has been purchased by Reserve Bank. This market will go a long way in supporting artisanal and small-scale miners. And I am told that by the end of this month, Reserve Bank will buy about 200 million worth of gold, from the market. Governance and rule of law sector. Madam Speaker, the governance and rule of law sector has been allocated 37.9 billion, which is 0.4% of GDP and representing 1.9% of the entire budget. This provision will cater for wages and salaries in the sector and operations of oversight institutions, including the Anti-Corruption Bureau, Office of the Ombudsman, Law Commission, and Malawi Human Rights Commission. One of the flagship projects in this sector is the construction of the judicial complex in Lilongwe, just across this Parliament building. Information and communication technology. Madam Speaker, the Malawi 2063 under the 6th enabler highlights the contribution that investments in information and communication technology infrastructure can bring to the country. During the 2021-2022 fiscal year, government will operationalize 13 telecom towers that were erected under the last mile rural connectivity project. So far, 26 telecom towers have been erected since the project started, and 15 of them are fully operational. Madam Speaker, government is also implementing the National Fiber Backbone Project. Phase 1 of this project was completed. Phase 2 is currently underway, which aims at laying optic fiber network connecting the districts to the high-speed network. Projects under local councils. Madam Speaker, the 2021-2022 development budget under local councils amounts to 30 billion kwacha, of which 2.8 billion is for the District Development Fund, 2.3 billion for the construction of water structures, 24.9 billion for construction of city roads, 1 billion for dualization of the Chileka-Blanta Road, and 607.9 million for Infrastructure Development Fund. Madam Speaker, the conditions of our city roads, drainage system, and street lighting are in very deplorable state. Government has therefore allocated 8.9 billion to the city of Blanta, 7.8 billion to the city of Lilongwe, 4.1 billion to the city of Mzuzu, and another 4.1 billion to the city of Zomba for the maintenance and rehabilitation of these city facilities. These are substantial amounts and can make a difference in the development of our cities. Government is therefore calling upon management of these city councils to work diligently to ensure that the allocated resources are used efficiently. Madam Speaker, government through the Treasury will monitor developments in this budget line. International relations, chairmanship of SADC. Madam Speaker, during the 2020-2021 financial year, Malawi was elected Vice Chair of the Southern Africa Development Community, Zodiak. I am pleased to inform the August House that this country will host the Zodiak Summit here in Lilongwe in August 2021, where His Excellency, the President, will take over the chairmanship of Zodiak. Revenue policy and administrative measures for the 2021-2022 fiscal year budget. Madam Speaker, government continued with implementation of policies that propelled mobilization of resources amidst the fiscal challenges that engulfed the economy due to the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Going forward, government through the Malawi Revenue Authority will intensify taxpayer education, awareness campaigns, and regular tax audits. I therefore would like to reiterate my appeal to all citizens to continue to contribute to the national resource envelope by developing a culture of paying taxes so that government mobilizes enough resources for improved service delivery and achievement of shared agenda of wealth creation as we pursue the National Vision Malawi 2063. In the same vein, Madam Speaker, by December 2021, some of the transactions between MRA and taxpayers will be fully automated, thereby curbing revenue leakages and reducing administrative costs and compliance costs for taxpayers. The importance of reforms cannot be overemphasized, as they would turn around business operations and bring efficiency in the organizations. Madam Speaker, the government will ensure that the policies are rejuvenating the private sector enterprises that are suffering from the effects of the pandemic while promoting local production and job creation to fulfill the Tonse Alliance agenda. The distribution of wealth will be pursued to ensure the progressivity of our tax system. Tax policy measures for the 2021-2022 budget. Madam Speaker, let me start with tax measures for the 2021-2022 budget. As you are aware, Madam Speaker, the customs and excise measures will be effective from midnight today, whereas value-added tax, income tax, and administrative measures will be effective 1st July 2021, when the relevant bills are passed by this August House. Customs measures. Madam Speaker, to boost the growth of small businesses and to reinvigorate the economy suffering from the effects of COVID-19 pandemic, government is introducing a duty-free week.
Honorable members, order please, order. Honorable members, order please.
Government is introducing a duty-free week for imports not exceeding $3,000. Taxpayers will benefit from this facility once a year. The dates for the duty-free week will be gazetted. The dates for the duty-free week will be gazetted within the year for taxpayers to prepare and benefit from it. Madam Speaker, to support growth of small businesses, we are increasing the COMESA simplified trade regime threshold from $2,000 to $3,000. This is a trade arrangement which allows cross-border traders in the COMESA region to enjoy duty-free status when they import goods originating from other member states. This means that small businesses in the country will now import qualifying items valued up to 3,000 kwacha without paying import duty. Excise tax and value-added tax is, however, payable where applicable. Madam Speaker, government has considered and granted the request by churches free importation of building materials for construction of churches or mosques. Accordingly, the Customs Procedure Code 422, which allows churches to import various items duty-free, will be amended to include building materials. Madam Speaker, in order to encourage importation of modern vessels and improve water transportation and tourism, government will allow duty-free importation of vessels for transportation of goods or people under CPC 3 for tourism industry. Madam Speaker, government has also removed import VAT on raw materials for use in manufacturing of medicaments, pharmaceuticals, and medical apparatus. And raw materials for use in printing and publishing books. These products, Madam Speaker, are currently VAT exempted. By subjecting the raw materials for producing them to VAT, the local producers were not able to claim VAT, input VAT, which was eventually being transferred to the consumers, thereby making them expensive and uncompetitive compared to similar imported products. Madam Speaker, Malawi submitted its instrument of ratification of the African Continental Free Trade Area Treaty in January 2021. To fulfill the commitments made under this treaty, the country will be reducing duty rates for imports from countries within the African Continental Free Trade Area. Government does not expect a huge revenue impact from the removal, considering that the country already trades with most countries in the region on a duty-free basis through the COMESA and indeed SADC treaties. On the other hand, this creates a huge market for Malawi products. Madam Speaker, to accommodate some privileges as provided in conditions of service of various public officers, government has introduced a customs procedure code to cater for duty-free importation of vehicles by the justices of the appeal and the High Court, judges, general officers of the Malawi Defense Force, grade A and B under the Civil Service, and Malawi Electoral Commission commissioners in line with their conditions of service. Madam Speaker, it was not possible for a privileged person or organization to buy a motor vehicle from another privileged person or organization using their privilege. Government will now start allowing privileged persons or organizations to buy from other privileged persons or organizations under various CPCs. Madam Speaker, realizing that there are various companies manufacturing soap in Malawi, government is removing 10% import duty on soap noodles, which is the key ingredient in soap manufacturing. This will allow manufacturers in Malawi to produce soap cheaply. Further, to support the soap manufacturing industry, soap will not be imported duty-free under any customs procedure code. Madam Speaker, government introduced industrial rebate scheme where companies import raw materials duty-free and excise-free to encourage local manufacturing and value addition. However, it has been noted that some companies prefer to use imported raw materials in favor of locally produced products. Accordingly, to encourage the use of locally produced raw materials, government is removing some raw materials such as plastic packaging materials under the industrial rebate scheme. The materials to be removed are those that are included in the approved list of materials under various industries if the same are produced in other approved industries under the scheme. This will promote local production by addressing the unfair advantage that these products had over locally produced goods. Madam Speaker, there are a variety of sports disciplines in this country, but only football and netball teams had the privilege of importing buses duty-free. In order to level the playing field in the sports arena, government will repeal CPC 482, which covered duty-free procurement of buses for football and netball teams. So the level will be, the ground will be leveled. Madam Speaker, government will not allow importation of various items under CPC 445 for personal use by a contractor, such as spare parts, stationery, office furniture, protective wear, and tools. This measure is to control abuse and remove the market distortions induced by unfair economic advantages. However, this does not apply to priority sector industries which are designated by government to encourage value addition. In the same vein, Madam Speaker, third parties will not be allowed to import goods duty-free under any CPC without prior approval of the Commissioner General. This is being done to control the abuse that has been noted. Madam Speaker, government has reviewed license fees as prescribed in paragraph 16.1 and 16.2 of the 8th schedule of the Customs and Excise Tariffs Order from 15,000 and 7,500 to 150,000 and 75,000 respectively. This will align the fees to the prevailing market prices and ensure that government is not subsidizing the service. Madam Speaker, government will increase processing fee for 10,000 to 15,000 and designation inspection fee from 30,000 to 35,000 to reflect the cost of recovery. These are fees charged when clearing import goods through clearing agents. Excise tax measures. Madam Speaker, to align the excise tax rates on opaque beer and malt beer as applicable within the region, government is reducing tax on opaque beer from 30% to 10%, while excise on malt beer will be reduced from 60% to 40%. This measure will make local products more competitive. Madam Speaker, government is reviewing the base for calculating excise tax in the gaming and betting industries from amount wagered or staked to gross gaming revenues. The excise tax rate is, however, being increased from 10% to 15%. And in addition, government is introducing a threshold of 100,000 for application of withholding tax on winnings from betting and gambling activities, including lotteries. This initiative will reduce compliance costs. Madam Speaker, smuggling is rampant in this country and affecting producers of various products, including alcohol, energy drinks, flavored water, carbonated soft drinks, sugar, and opaque non-alcoholic drinks. Government is therefore introducing the requirement for affixing or printing of electronic tax stamps on these products to curb smuggling and the influx of counterfeit products on the market. Madam Speaker, our supermarkets are flooded with imported food products that are locally produced. In order to encourage local production, government will review the surcharge rates on various products, including vegetables and blankets. VAT measures. Madam Speaker, in order to enhance management of value-added tax and align with VAT thresholds prevailing in countries within the SADC region, government has increased VAT registration threshold from 10 million kwacha to 25 million kwacha. Madam Speaker, government realizes the importance of promoting local production of goods to enable the local producers thrive and create jobs. Government has therefore zero-rated fuel ethanol, printed books and textbooks. Fuel ethanol is being zero-rated to align with the treatment of other fuel products, while printed books and textbooks are being zero-rated to allow the book printing companies to be competitive with imported books and textbooks. Madam Speaker, government appreciates the development of aquaculture to enable the local fish breeders improve local production and become competitive. Fish feed has been zero-rated, and machinery specifically for producing fish feed will be exempt from VAT. In this regard, a tariff subheading has been created to provide clarity. Madam Speaker, portable sprayers for agricultural or horticultural are VAT exempt, but they do not cover agricultural or horticultural sprayers mounted on tractors for commercial farming. Government has therefore removed VAT on other agricultural or horticultural sprayers. Madam Speaker, there has not been there has been some confusion over certain transactions which are not banking in nature, but are treated as banking services, hence not subjected to VAT. Government will therefore provide clarity on which transactions are banking, so that VAT is charged on non-banking services in line with the law. Government is also reducing the validity of invoices for claiming of input VAT by VAT registered taxpayers from 12 months to 6 months. This will reduce abuse of the system. Madam Speaker, Government will amend Section 25 of the VAT Act to make uploading of stocks in electronic fiscal devices, EFDs, mandatory. Electronic fiscal devices have a stock management module which is very relevant to stock-based audits and inspections. Most taxpayers are not maintaining proper stock records, which is perpetuating VAT fraud. Income tax measures. Madam Speaker, a good tax system needs to conform to the principles progressively or vertical equity, in that high-income earners should pay more taxes. The government has therefore introduced 2 new pay-as-you-earn brackets of 25% for incomes between 100,000 to 1 million kwacha per month. This bracket, Madam Speaker, as you recall, was attracting 30%. So the percentage has come down. And has introduced 40% for very high income earners in excess of 6 million kwacha per month. Accordingly, the new monthly pay schedule will be 0 to 100 at 0%, between 100,000 to 1 million at 25%, between 1 million to 3 million at 30%, between 3 million to 6 million at 35%, and above 6 million at 40%. This will promote distribution of wealth in the country and increase disposable income for all low-income earners. Madam Speaker, the government is aware of the huge number of businesses in the informal sector that are not yet in the tax net. In order to incorporate the informal sector and widen the tax net, government has made a number of requirements mandatory. These include the following: A, tax clearance certificate for the following services and transactions. For all people vying for elected public office, they have to produce a tax clearance certificate.
Order, honorable members, order. Order.
Madam Speaker, government has made a number of requirements mandatory. These include the following: A, tax clearance certificate for the following services and transactions. For all people vying for elected public office, they have to produce a clearance certificate. for all regulated professionals, thereby extending coverages beyond lawyers, medical practitioners. These already comply to that law, but this law is capturing all other professionals who are not already in that category. They also have to produce a clearance certificate. Employees in foreign missions and international organizations, when issuing or renewing certificate of fitness for commercial vehicles, and before issuing or renewing business license and export license by institutions such as seat assemblies, Ministry of Trade, and indeed Ministry of Lands. Introduce a requirement for all citizens to have taxpayer identification number, TIPIN, and require TIPIN when opening bank accounts and the other services. Introduction of presumptive tax rates for small businesses whose turnover is less than 12.5 million kwacha to encourage compliance. In addition, the Malawi Revenue Authority shall promote block management to ensure that all traders, especially in cities and towns, are tax compliant. Madam Speaker, these initiatives will ensure that the informal sector and all other small businesses are paying their share of taxes. Madam Speaker, government has reintroduced withholding tax on imports, which will be applicable to all commercial importers without a valid tax clearance certificate. This will be called advance income tax. And it will have an exempt list which will include international organizations that are exempt from income tax, government entities, and imports below $3,000 US. This will enhance voluntary compliance and will capture the informal traders that are not yet paying taxes. Non-tax measures. Madam Speaker, in order to promote tourism in this country, and also considering that tourism is one of the sectors which has been really very badly hit by the pandemic, government has aligned the multiple visa charges with those in our neighboring countries by reducing the charge for multiple entry from $150 to $80. In the same vein, the single entry visa has been reduced from 75 to 50. Administrative measures. Madam Speaker, there is need to amend a proviso in Section 105, subsection 5 of the Taxation Act, to remove the ambiguity in which the court has interpreted tax expenses as meaning that they shall only be paid before an appeal is heard, only where the Commissioner General has reasonable suspicion that the taxpayer is moving out of the jurisdiction and will forever be at large. Madam Speaker, let me inform the honourable members that the tax policy measures that I have announced in this budget statement, except those that I already mentioned, their effective date will become effective from 1st July once the relevant amendment bills under the Taxation Act and VAT Act are deliberated and passed by this August House. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, the 2021-2022 budget is the first under the new national vision, the Malawi 2063. In many ways, therefore, this budget sets Malawi on the trajectory towards the achievement of the nation's aspirations towards 2063. Madam Speaker, as we implement this budget, challenges are inevitable. These can, however, be surmounted only if we work together towards the vision we have set for ourselves. I therefore wish to call upon the honourable members to constructively deliberate on this budget and provide to us the necessary guidance which we always uphold in the highest esteem. Madam Speaker, as I conclude, let me take this opportunity to sincerely thank our development partners for the enormous support rendered to the government of Malawi in this development agenda. Madam Speaker, development partners have been instrumental in supporting government in times of need, such as during the current COVID-19 pandemic. Let me therefore invite the honourable members here present to join me in thanking our development partners for their continued support to this country, both in good and bad times. Madam Speaker, in closing, let me leave the honourable members with a motivational quote from Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States of America, and I quote, "What you are, be a good one," end of quote. It is my sincere hope that we are all a good representative of our people whom we all serve. Madam Speaker, I beg to move.
Thank you, Honourable Minister of Finance. Honourable members, we have a motion on the floor that the 2021-2022 budget estimates should now be referred to cluster committees for scrutiny, and that the committees should report back to the House on their findings and recommendations after 10 working days as required by our Standing Order 137, Part 2. Those of that opinion say aye. Aye. Those of the contrary view say no. The ayes have it and the motion is carried. Honourable members, before I adjourn the House, I have a few announcements to make. First, it's on cluster committees. I wish to inform you, honourable members, that now the budget estimates for 2021-2022 have been presented by the Honourable Minister of Finance. The House will break into cluster committees for a period of 10 working days to scrutinize the budget estimates in committees in accordance to Standing Order 137, Part 2. This will be done from Monday, 31st May to Friday, 11th June 2021. Honourable members are advised that clusters will be held here at Parliament Building and at Golden Peacock Hotel. Chairpersons of cluster committees should liaise with their committee clerks to ensure that stakeholders should submit their presentations electronically and timely. I therefore wish to call upon all chairpersons of the cluster committees to ensure that all COVID-19 preventive measures are strictly adhered to during the cluster committee meetings. There are 10 cluster committees as follows. Cluster 1, Agriculture, Irrigation and Natural Resources and Climate Change will meet at Parliament Building Members Lounge. Cluster 2, Health and HIV/AIDS Nutrition will meet at Parliament Building Ministerial Lounge. Cluster 3, Social and Community Affairs and Local Authorities and Rural Development will meet at Golden Peacock Hotel. Cluster 4, International Relations and Defense Security will meet at Parliament Building, room 257. Cluster 5, Education, Science and Technology will meet at Golden Peacock. Cluster 6, Transport and Public Infrastructure will meet at Golden Peacock. Cluster 7, Public Accounts and Budget will meet at Parliament Building, room 251. Cluster 8, Legal Affairs and Government Assurance will meet at Golden Peacock. Cluster 9, Commissions, Statutory Authorities and Public Appointments will meet at Golden Peacock. Cluster 10, Industry, Trade and Tourism, Media and Communications will meet at Golden Peacock. Furthermore, I wish to inform you, honorable members, that it has been usually the case in the past. Each member is allocated to one cluster committee. The detailed information regarding membership and specific votes for each cluster will be circulated to members. The second announcement is on the distribution of the budget documents. I wish to inform the House that, as communicated on the first day of the current meeting of Parliament, the budget documents, including the budget statements delivered by the Honourable Minister of Finance, will be made available to all members electronically soon after I adjourn the House. I wish to assure the honourable members that arrangements are being made to improve on the internet availability within Parliament building, and that the honourable members will be provided with internet bundles to facilitate in the downloading of documents electronically. The last announcement, honourable members, lastly, let me congratulate. This will make an announcement later. Honourable members, I thank you for your attention, and I now adjourn the House until Monday, 14th. Yes, Leader of the House.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Madam. Sorry that I am rising when you're about to adjourn the House. First of all, I have to sincerely apologize that during the presentation of Madam, I needed to apologize to you when the minister was presenting the budget. There were some movements from ministers in the first line. And also this is just to alert the members that our dear sister, Honorable Deputy Minister of Health, has lost her dad. And that happened, the message came in when the minister was presenting the budget, and hence there was a need for some members to come and communicate to her, and then that she was supposed to leave the building. And we pray for her, and may the soul of her dad rest in peace. Secondly, Madam, as we have announced about the cluster meetings, there is a tendency of absenteeism. And I wanted to emphasize that the fact that we are going into clusters for the 2 weeks, it doesn't necessarily mean that people are going on holiday. Therefore, just to emphasize that the registers will continue to be there, so members are supposed to really participate in the cluster meetings. Just wanted to emphasize on that one, Madam. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Leader, for that. Indeed, cluster committees are supposed to be treated just as we treat plenary here. So registers will be floating, and as we've been doing in the committees, various members of the leadership, from the Speaker to the Deputy Speakers, will be attending the cluster committees. Thank you. Honourable members, I now adjourn the House to Monday, June 14th, 2021 at 2 p.m. House adjourned.
to Monday, 14th of June, as you heard by the Speaker of the National Assembly, Catherine Gotani Hara. In case you're just joining us, welcome. You've been watching a live.